Welcome to the Connect with BMC Helix ITSM webinar series. During today's on-demand event, you're able to ask questions. The questions are sent to our panelists, they're reviewed, and answers will be provided. All answers will be posted to the recording that is posted to our YouTube channel. And today's topic is UDM Data Load Best Practices. Ankur Singh will take us through this content. Over to you, Ankur.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Ankur Singh and I am a lead TSA supporting Helix ITSM application. Let's go through today's agenda. We'll be looking at an overview of what is UDM, how it is useful to load the data of different categories, the architecture based on forms, how data flows between the forms, and the console. We will also learn about the best practices with loading data. We will be troubleshooting some of the common issues. And at the end, we will be looking at some of the useful knowledge articles and documentations to help with the load of data using UDM. What is UDM? It is a unified data management tool you can use to import the data in your Remedy ITSM application. This data gets synced further in other integrated applications like DWP, DWP Catalog, Smart Reporting, Innovation Suite. UDM provides out-of-the-box job templates and spreadsheets to load the data of different categories like foundation, process setup, and transactional. Foundation data applies to all the BMC Remedy ITSM application suite. It includes the data like company, sites, people, etc. Process setup is a configuration data that affects the process for a specific application like decision tree for service desk. Transactional records are the records which are created during the day-to-day use of the product like incident, change requests, etc. Why UDM is useful? UDM provides convenience of selecting the input source method needed along with the out-of-the-box spreadsheets. These sources can be external to the database like loading the CMDB data from external database, LDAP to load the people data, flat file integration like out-of-the-box spreadsheets which can be created separately and placed in the FTP folders for job to access. It also provides automated validation and promotion of data as per the system-defined validation, irrespective of the way the data is loaded in the out-of-the-box load forms. You can also create predefined custom templates to assist load of data and provides a user-friendly interface to perform the quick data validation and correct them even after the load. Let's look at the architecture based on configuration forms. The form visible in the screen stores all the important data used during the UDM data load cycle. Let's go through them one by one to understand the configuration data they store. Sys:/system settings. This form is used to configure the data management load file path utilized by UDM process during the job run. For each job which uses the file to load data, there is a directory created at the server at the configured location on this form. The directory is named as job ID of the job which is created. This directory stores the file which is uploaded via the UDM job onto the server. The directory creation is successful or not can be tested via a button present on this form. Next form is UDM:config. This form stores the Atrium integrator server information. The entry with the default checkbox checked is the server which UDM would be using to create the jobs for loading the data by default. UDM:rf password. This form stores the credential of Remedy application service to communicate with the Carte server present in each server. In both of UDM:config and UDM:rf password form, there should be an entry for each AR server in the server group environment, including the load balancer entry. Next form is DMT schedule manager. This form is used to store the schedules created for UDM jobs. For each schedule, there would be a record with time to run. It relates with UDM jobs via job dev GUID field. If you want to search the job runs for a specific schedule, you can search with the job dev GUID value in this form against the same field in the UDM console. If you want to see the first job that was scheduled, search with the parent underscore job underscore GUID value in this form against the instance ID in the DMT console. Now let's look at the two forms together. DMT colon sys colon staging form dependency and DMT colon sys colon sequencing engine. This is because of the way they interact with each other. DMT colon sys colon staging form dependency form is used to create the out-of-the-box sequencing entries for all the job steps. The sequencing entry are stored in DMT colon sys colon sequencing engine form. These entries can be identified with a string do not remove in the parent job GUID field present in a DMT colon sys colon sequencing engine form. These entries are further used as a template record to create the transactional job step entries. Now, let's look at the important transactional forms which come in picture when the UDM job is run. These forms store the transactional data which should be cleared after the job is completed. If there is any residual entries in such forms, the job would be either in progress or stale. The first one that we are looking at is UDM colon execution status. This is a vendor form which fetches the data directly from Karte server where the job is submitted. Load step is marked as completed only if the status is returned as finished. There's an escalation named as DMT colon DJS colon set status, which triggers the workflow processing to check the status of the job and does marking the load step as completed. If the job is removed from the Karte server, status shows as waiting. Please note, if you have a job whose execution instance shows as waiting and the job is in progress in the load step, the respective UDM job will remain in progress unless it is cancelled and recreated to get the new execution instance entry. Next is UDM colon execution instance. This form is used to store the unique instance ID of each job run. For every UDM job, there is one execution instance created by default. ATRM integrator engine object ID where field value denotes the Karte object which is created at the Karte server. The object ID field on this form is the identifier for the respective job and transformation metadata record. CI event. This form triggers the plugin call to create the transactional records for the job run. All the step category use this form. Every UDM job event should have the event name as DLD underscore out underscore create, which triggers the data processing thread in the DMT thread manager form via sequencing. Next form is UDM colon variable. This form is used to store the variable data being sent to Karte server. For each set of variable created, there is a unique variable set name, which can be found in UDM execution instance form as well. Using this form, we can relate our custom variable to reuse in the job we are running, provided the same instance is triggered again. Next form is DMT colon thread manager. This form is used to create and manage the threads used during the job run. Based on setting in CAI pools, number of thread records are generated. Data in the load form are pushed to main forms in the chunk of 100 records per cycle. Each thread takes turn in validating promoting the records. Once all the associated records are deleted via workflow processing, the job gets finished. Next is DMT colon action. This form is used to trigger the processing of entries in the DMT transactional forms. It communicates directly with CAI colon events, DMT colon thread manager, and DMT colon sys colon sequencing engine form. So far, we came to know about the configuration form and the transactional forms that are used during the UDM data load run. Now, let's look at how they interact with each other in the current slide. When the UDM job is created and run, An execution instance gets generated and stored in the UDM:execution instance form. Sequencing entries associated to the job are created using out-of-the-box sequencing entry and get stored in the DMT:sys::sequencing engine form. These entries are triggered as per the sequence defined with the help of DMT action and CI event transactional records. DMT action is also responsible for creating the thread manager entries. The number of records in the thread manager form depends on the configuration of the CAI. Whatever is the default pool configuration, that number of records will be created. These entries are further triggered or initialized by DMT action record via CAI event processing. Once the processing of data starts, the record thread manager type as thread starts loading the data in the load form. The data is loaded in the chunk of 100 per run. This data is further processed into the validated state and then gets promoted to the target forms. Let's look at some of the best practices which can be used to ensure we have a successful and error-free data load. Download sheet from Data Management Console. We should always download the sheet from DMT console whenever we are using out-of-the-box jobs to load the data. If the sheet intended to be used with a specific job is used with some other job, you'll get an error during the load step. Do not rerun the job that failed in the load step. Always clean up the load and transactional forms periodically. It can be done using the system workflows by setting up the application preferences to clean the data as intended. High number of records in the load forms may result in the job performance issues. Use wait on validate and promote step. You should always put it on wait to avoid unexpected data getting loaded in the final forms like people. For scheduled jobs, we should ensure that the source, whichever we have used for loading the data, is putting the correct data every time. Load bulk data in chunks. Whenever we are loading the bulk data using UDM, it is always a good practice to divide the data in chunks to avoid the unexpected issues like job getting stuck or performance issues. Create and reuse templates for running the jobs. Use this to avoid creating unnecessary transactional record, thus ensuring the job gets completed as expected. Let's move to demo. We'll be looking at the UDM console and all the functionalities present in the console. Let us have a look at the DMT console. Right now, I'm logged in with Remedy Administrator, but to go to the DMT console and use the console, you need to have a minimum of DMT admin and DMT user permission. I click on Application Flyout menu, go to Data Management. I can see the option of Onboarding Wizard, Job Console, Spreadsheet Management, and Data Wizard. Before we go to Job Console, let's visit Spreadsheet Management. You can come here to download the spreadsheets to load the data into the BMC out-of-the-box forms. Once you click on the spreadsheet type as BMC template, you should be able to see all the spreadsheets in the list. You can click on download. A specific spreadsheet will be downloaded. I'll go back home, click on data management, and then now I will go to the job console. This is the UDM console. Here we have two filters where you can see all the jobs on the basis of the job status. You can filter by the job that are run by other people or your own jobs. On the left side, you have job functions which you can use to create the job or you can use to search the job. We'll see the creation later. let me show you how to search the job. If you click on it, it will take you to the search screen where you can search with the required fields. Whatever the fields that you are looking at the screen, you can search with any one of them. Advanced option is also available. Like if I want to search for all the jobs that are submitted today, I'll go back to the job console. In the other functions, you have got the links to create template, search for the existing template. You can either do the alias mapping. You can click on the application preferences to set your application preference. If I click on the application preference here, it will take me to the preference for my user. Under the data management console, I can see how many days I want to keep the promoted staging records. Is it for 7 days or less? Do I want to get notified before deleting the non-promoted records? And delete the job in steps after 60 days or whatever days that you want to configure. You can configure here. Now let's see how to create the job. There is a create button here. There's a create button here. Both will take you to the same screen. We'll be using the button here. I'll get the job name as webinar test. Select the company name and I'll save the job. The job gets saved. Once it is saved, you get the steps, you get the screen to create the steps. You can either create the specific step or you can use the BMC template to create all the load, validate and promote stage steps. We'll be using BMC templates. Let's look at the, let's say if I want to load the people organization, I'll click on it and I'll select step categories, come here, load, validate and promote. If I want to use out of the box spreadsheet, I'll go to this load stage. I'll double click on it. It will give me the load screen. Here I can attach the file. I already have a prepared file which I'll be using to load the data. I've chosen the file. I'll click on OK. I'll click on save and I'll go back here. I'll set the job status to build. Save the record and run it. Let's look at some of the configuration form in the meantime. The job is run. This is this form which stores the definition for the configuration of Atrium integrator servers. If you see here, I only have one server, but if you have more than one, then there will be entries of all the server in this form. Whichever is checked as default, that will be used by default for the UDM process. The port number in Helix case is always 20,000. Let's go to another form. RF password. This form stores the Remedy application service credentials for AR server to communicate with the Carter server. One other form that we looked at was staging form dependency. You don't need to often come on this form, but whenever you want to rebuild the sequencing entries, you can come on this form and you can click on this button. There's an active link that fires which creates the sequencing entries. Sequencing entries on this form. If I look with parent job GUID as to not remove, I click on search, I'll be getting 464 records. This is all the template entries which is utilized by every job when the job is run. For every job run, there is a record created on this form. If I come back here, I'll do a new search with the instance of this job in the parent job GUID field. I'll be able to see the load step, validate step, and the promote step entries that are created. Other configuration form which we talked about was system settings and schedule manager. If I go here, I can see that the data management load file path is set with this. If I click on test, I get a message saying that the test has been executed and appears successful, which is an indicator that the UDM job load step will be created fine. Another configuration form that we looked at was DMT:schedule manager. If I come here and if I search, I'll see the schedule status as scheduled. The next schedule time, it gives me all the information here. If you look at this field, next schedule time, last schedule time, parent underscore job underscore GUID, job def GUID. You can search with this field in the DMT console. I'll type the field. Equals to this value. I'll see how many jobs has run from this schedule. And the last job that was run was 10th of August. Now let's get back to the job which we ran. How we can search for that job is either you go back to the same screen or you come back here, click on show all my jobs. It will give me the job that we ran. Since we can see that the job is still in progress, there must be something wrong in the system. Let's look at the log files to see what might have caused this problem. I'll go to Remedy Management Console and the Server Group Console. Here we have many sections. I'll go to Logs and I'll go to View Logs. I'll select the server name. Since I know the file name for the Karte server logging is arkarte.log, I'll type the file name and I'll click on Get File. When I get the file, I click on View. And I see that when my job ran, you can see it got created under this directory at this location, which was configured in the system settings. And it is looking for the specific sheet, could not find load people organization. And then the job execution is finished. Now we come back to job console. We open my job again. We go to the load step. And we see the sheet. Now, if I look at the sheet is used for loading the people data. And the atrium integrator job, which I am using, is something else. That is what is causing the problem. I'll go back to this job and I'll click on cancel job. I'll click on this plus button to create a new job. Select the company name as earlier. Save the job. Now this time I'll be selecting the people sheet, people AI job. Let's input the sheet here. I'll click on save. Set the job to built. Put the validate in wait stage. You notice when you put the validate in wait, promote also gets wait because validate will not proceed further. So the promote will also not proceed. This is because of the sequencing entries. Now, if I click on run, it will only run the load step if it is finished. Now let's look at the scenario where we want to change the login ID of the user. If you see here, I already have a login ID which says ALI. Okay. Now I want to change it to some other login ID. I'll use the same sheet again. I will put ALI in the alternate ID field, since I know that the alternate ID is used to verify whether the login ID is changing or not, and I'll give the new login ID, whatever I want to change. Okay, I will load the sheet again. Come back here, come to DMT console, create a new job. Give name login change, save it, use the correct AI job, which is the people job. Attach the sheet that you want to change. Remove the unwanted steps. Make the job status as build and run the job. If you see, the validation is successfully done and promote people. There is a license check. We'll keep on, click on continue. And the job is completed. Now we will go and verify whether this login ID has changed in the system or not. If you can see, the license type of this record and the login ID has changed. If I go to user form and I search with this record, I see that it has not changed. The reason for that is if we go and check here, we can see that the record is submitted here for the data wizard processing. Once the record is processed, the login ID in the user form should change and the record should be deleted from this form. Click on refresh to see if the escalation picked. Yeah, the escalation has picked this record. Now if we go to the data wizard console, we should be able to see the record has been submitted for the data wizard processing. If I click on view status, the status is in, there is no count or update is in progress. If I click on view audit log, I should be able to see the last record that was submitted and modified by the AR escalator user. You can see this record was already submitted. Now if I go back to the user form, tada, the login ID is changed. That was it from the demo perspective. We'll get back to the slide again. Before we take a look at some of the commonly occurring issues and how to solve them, let's look at some of the troubleshooting guides which has been created to serve the same purpose. BMC support has created several troubleshooting guides. You just need to open the link for Helix ITSM 2105 and look for the troubleshooting section at the top level. These guides are based on the commonly raised support issues, so you'll be finding every bit of latest problem that you are facing. Troubleshooting common issues. I have outlined some of the common problem statements, causes, and solution which we will be discussing in the current and upcoming slides. First problem to discuss is schedule job does not trigger. Some of the common causes for the schedule job to not trigger in Helix ITSM application is if the escalation is stuck or the last schedule is in progress. To rectify this problem, check if the global escalation are running. You can verify this by taking escalation log on the server where escalation is enabled. If no log lines are generated, that means the escalations are not running or stuck globally. Report this issue to customer support. A quick workaround would be to take the restart of the admin operation enabled server. Second issue can be if the specific application escalation responsible for triggering the job is not running. Verify the escalation DMT:SHM:schedule_run job is running every minute. Check if the escalation is pooled and if no other escalation is running on the same pool. If you want to further troubleshoot, you can check the error in the API SQL filter logs to see the filter DMT SHM schedule underscore set job ID is triggered or not. And if it is triggered, whether it is getting some error or not. If the last scheduled job is in progress, you can cancel the job, run the job manually to see if there are no errors, and if the job completed without any issue. Create a new schedule and verify. You can also refer to the solution mentioned in the article 000365114. Now let's have a look at another common issue which usually come in the Helix ITSM space: error in the load step or job getting stuck while running. There are many common problems, many causes to this problem, but most common ones are incorrect connections, escalation not running, or Carter server is having some issues. Incorrect connection comes whenever the job which was run locally using client gateway connections are now being run from the console, and the connection configuration has not been updated accordingly. Second, when it comes as when there was a DB refresh and the connection was overwritten. And the third one is if the job was imported from dev to QA and it uses a different username connections. So all of these combined with the same problem where we have to correct the incorrect connections. The second problem that we have seen, the second cause that we have seen is escalation not running. This problem usually occurs if the escalation pool is kept busy by another escalation running on the same pool. So we have to make sure that the escalation is always kept on the dedicated pool and there is no other custom escalation that is put on the same pool, which is keeping the server busy. Other problem when the job gets stuck is when the admin servers are not responding. It corresponds to the Carter server issues as well. You can go through the solution in this KA 000365114. The escalation that I was talking about in this picture is DMT DJS set status. Another common problem which we have is job getting stuck or error in validate or promote status. Cause of these problems can be mostly seen in the CI events form. CI event triggers the action to start the validate and promote processing via DMT thread manager form, as we have discussed earlier. If the step seems to be stuck, it can be checked in this form with the event as DLD underscore out underscore create as event name, and app interface form as DMT sys sequencing engine. Typically, we receive a 92 timeout or 93 error or 382 codes, which takes the separate route to fix. For example, 9293, you can re-trigger the event by setting the return code as start and save the record. If it processes, it means that the server was busy during the time and the thread is freed from to perform the DMT processing. If not, then reach out to support. For 382 errors, the target form already has a record which we are trying to create. So these are some of the error statements. You can look in the error description to see if there is anything related to data which can be fixed. Another common problem that we have seen is when the bulk login ID changes are performed, user and people are not in sync, which causes the cascading effect or problems in the other application as well, along with the ITSM. We have seen the login change scenario in our demo as well. DMT supports the bulk login updates. In a nutshell, data wizard changes are triggered when the workflow finds the changes in the login ID, first name, last name, or whatever the data wizard job is capable of changing. And the pivot field in all these changes, alternate ID. DMT skips such record for normal processing and pushes the record in the DMT sys data wizard queue form, where an escalation fires to check if there is no longer wizard job running on it. If there is no job running, it submits the record for requested change. If there is a stuck record in the DLD log form, it indicates that there is a stuck data wizard job. The bulk changes for login ID will never be pushed, and thus we will see the inconsistency in the people and user form. Quick solution is again to check the error messages in the CI events form and correct whatever the error that we are receiving, if it is the data correction. Another problem could be the escalation DMT colon DWQ colon push to data viz action is not running or is running slow because of too many records. Please note, if there are too many records in this form, data DMT colon sys colon data wizard queue, it may also lead to the performance issue. Even if the escalation is running, you'll see that the people and user form is not in sync. First solution would be to pool the escalation in the dedicated pool and follow the best practice recommendation to adjust the environment. You can always reach out to BMC customer support to make all the changes. Any other causes can be captured by re-triggering the event and capturing it in API, SQL, and filter log combined. This slide gives you the references about the different knowledge articles and documentation, which will help in the troubleshooting job creation process while you continue the journey with the data load. To summarize, we looked at the form level architecture, important configuration and transaction forms, how they communicate with each other. We understood the best practices to load the data successfully. We also saw the DMT console, how to create and run the UDM jobs. We looked at the useful log files and troubleshoot some of the common issues. With this, I conclude my presentation. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you. And now I'll take us through the self-help in contacting BMC. The YouTube channel where this webinar will be posted is listed here. It contains past webinars as well as a rich set of how-to videos. The Connect with BMC Helix ITSM and Remedy webinar schedule is available at this community's link. And the hot off the press newsletter for trending information is available at this community's post. As always, contacting technical support via web, phone, email, and these social channels is available. At this time, that will conclude this webinar. Thank you for attending.